Hello, and welcome to the Spooky Chris podcast. My name is Chris Ringler. I am the aforementioned Spooky Chris. I am a writer and blah, 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 blah. You know me. You know me. I'm a writer and oddball guy living in mid-Michigan. This is my short-form podcast. Hopefully you found this on my website, spookychris.com. You could have found it on Anchor. You could have found it anywhere. Wherever you found it, friend, know that you can find out more about me at spookychris.com, where I have all my stories and my books and all that blah, blah, blah. I'm breathing heavy because I went downstairs. God, it's rough being old. So I thought this time, I don't think I've written a lot about it, but I've never actually talked about, directly, the horror convention that me and some friends started, so I thought it'd be fun to talk about that for a few minutes. So, my first convention experience were the Fangoria Magazine's Weekend of Horrors. That was in 1990 and 1991. They happened in Dearborn, Michigan. They were horror conventions. I'd never been to anything like that. I'd never been to a convention. And I went with a friend and then another guy he knew, and his mom, and we all went, and we stayed down there, and it was amazing. We spent the whole weekend down there, and yeah, like I say, it was amazing. It was a weird, fun experience being around, for folks who haven't ever experienced that. So, in horror conventions, genre conventions are different than a lot of them. I'm doing conventions for a long time, and genre conventions are a little different because you're getting just that, kind of that slice of fandom. So it's just sci-fi fans, and just horror fans. And so it's not like a mixed bag. So say, a big comic convention. You're getting a little bit of everyone because it's so many different genres together, different forms, different fandoms. With a horror convention, it's all of us weird horror weirdos, and it's kind of like a family. The vendors form a family. The guests know each other at this point because the guests have been on the same circuit. They've been doing the movies together, and the fans get to know each other. And it's a cool environment, and it's super unique. To be around so many folks that even if you don't agree on opinions and stuff, you have kind of interest in the same stuff. And super cool. So that was my first experience. I went to comic conventions afterwards. They were a little smaller in the mid-90s. And, as I started writing and everything, I started doing conventions more and more. Well, fast forward to 2011, and I was working part-time at a t-shirt shop doing cleanup stuff, and then I had several part-time gigs trying to survive, and I was making just over 10 grand a year. I think it was 11 grand a year. And so when you're making that kind of money, you get more money back in tax returns. So I got my tax return back, and it was I think it seems like it was a little over $800. And I got it, and you know how this is. When you get a bunch of money back in tax returns, you feel like you're rich for a second. You're like, oh my gosh, I can do anything. I can do whatever. And it's funny because all of the dreams and ideas and stuff stack up, and you can't ever do any of that. Most time you're like, oh yeah, I do this. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do this. You go out for one awesome meal, and then you're like, yeah, I forgot I have to pay bills with the rest of it. You forget that life kind of has plans for that money when you wanted to do something with it. But so I had this money, and it was kind of free money at that time. I was, I was paying my bills. I was surviving. It was amazing, but I was, if you're smart, you can adapt. And I was at an age where I didn't have a lot of craziness that I had to pay off. So I had kind of $800 free and clear. So I was like, well, I look at it two ways. I can go out of state and I can do a horror convention. I'd never done a horror convention as a vendor. I'd been vending for a while. I'd started to put books out again. I put my first book out in 1999. I put my second in 2009. So I was like, well, I can take my show on the road and try my hand at an out-of-state con and see what happens. Odds are, by the time I pay for the show, pay for the gas and everything, it's going to be the $800. And I love doing shows. I don't make really any money at them. I never break even. But I do them because it's a great way to get your name out there. It's a great way. Just if you look at it in the right way, it works. Like I looked at it kind of like a vacation. And so, in looking at it that way, it works. I'd make a little money and kind of start to recoup a little bit of what I had spent. Again, you get your name out there, you meet a ton of people, you make a lot of connections, you make friends, and truly, it's not a number you can put on friendship. Just going to StokerCon last year, I met somebody, one new friend, which was pretty great, and I got to hang out with somebody I've admired for a long time. So, it works out. I've made a lot of friends at cons and stuff, so it works out. Money is money, but that's the kind of stuff that there really is truly no price on. So I figured I could do that, but I was like, I'm never going to make that $800. The return is, essentially zero. And again, you get a lot out of it, and it's great, and blah, blah, blah. But, looking at the bottom line, I wouldn't make my money back. So I'd be kind of, it'd be a great experience. Option B. So option B was I could try to put on a convention. Which, in retrospect, is hilarious that I thought I could do that. I don't know why. Because, so 2004, 2005, I got involved with maybe before that, maybe 2003, with an arts group in Flint. And worked with them, and we did art events and all this stuff. So by the time 2011 came around, I had been, I left that group, but me and my friends had put on book shows. We put on art shows. We'd done all kinds of stuff. Me and one of my friends had helped program a weird underground movie night at this guy's store we knew. So we'd done events and stuff. So I guess I was being just a shade cocky and thinking oh no, totally, I can totally put a convention on. Convention, no big deal. But I'd had in my craw for a long time, our area has had conventions, but not a horror convention, not in Flint. They've been kind of comic-y, kind of mixed conventions, but not a straight up horror con. So I was like, So I connected with some of my friends. Two friends I lived in the same building with that were kind of artisty folks, and another friend that I've had for ages. And talked to them, and I'm like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think? And they were like, okay. Because at the time I was friends with a guy who was a horror host. He was a horror host out of Detroit, and I was friends with him. I still know him, but he was still on the air back then. So I'm like, well, there's one guest. We know people who know Tom Sullivan, who is the guy who created the Book of the Dead and Evil Dead. He did the special effects for the Evil Dead. And we know people who know him. So there's a couple of people. We can work with them. We know tons of artists, so we knew potential vendors, so we could work with this. So the money was going to basically pay for venue. So I went and I found a venue in downtown Flint. I worked with them. We bandied about what we needed, this and that, the space. Signed the contract, hunky dory. Started moving forward. Well, a couple months later, I hear from woman I went through at the venue, and she's like, oh, yeah, no, and she kept calling me Christopher, And it was the most condescending thing ever. Said, "Oh, Christopher, that won't pay for that." And I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, no. That would pay for 4 hours. That doesn't pay for a whole day." I'm like, "No, we talked about this. Like, a convention isn't 4 hours. That's not how this works." "Oh, Christopher, that's not how this works." And it was the most angering thing ever. So I'm like, F it. So I got my money back and pulled the plug on that. And I was screwed. Like, we'd already kind of started to put the things together, and I'd met with my friend and made a deal with him that he was going to be the host of the show. Like, my friend that was the horror host, and he was going to be my host and my guest, and I worked out kind of a money and bartering deal with him to get him to do it. Like, I was getting him some T-shirts made. We'd already started putting things together. One of the people that joined us knew tons of horror folks. Him and his at the time wife went to horror conventions all the time, so they had tons of connections. They're the ones that know Tom Sullivan. So it felt like the world was crashing down around me. Like, this stupid dream I had, and everything was starting to kind of, like, I'd gotten my friends together, and then one by one they kind of, like, of the 4 that formed it, 2 of them pulled out. Once we lost the venue, they were like, I just don't think this is going to happen. I'm gonna sit this one out. So it was me and my friend that I've had for ages, and then this other guy that was kind of on the outer satellite. And I just didn't, the venue fell through, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't have that much money. I had the money, I got from the venue place. Basically, yeah, because I'd gotten that money back. But I didn't know, Flint for all of its great things, there's not a lot of places, and back then it was easier actually even than it is now, but there wasn't a lot of venues to do shows like that. So I didn't know what the heck I was going to do. So I reached out to a friend of mine who is no longer with us, and I was like, "This is what's going on, what do you think?" He's like, "Man, I support whatever you're going to do." Like, he's like, I say go for it. And like him supporting me, and it wasn't that anyone was like, "No, you can't do it." And my now wife supported me. Like we were together back then, and she was like, "Hey man, whatever you want to do, I'm with you." So because I had the support of these folks that I loved, I was like, you know what? Screw it, we're going to do this. So I got a hold of the local Masonic Temple in Flint. A big old building, supposedly haunted. I mean, you could see why it'd be haunted. It's a freaky building. It's gorgeous. So I talked to them and worked out a deal where we paid $800 for the main hall auditorium, for a second floor for vending, for another floor of vending, and it's like the 4th floor it's the red floor. The blue, so we were on the main floor, the blue floor, which is like the Masonic floor, and then the red floor, and that's where they actually even had theater seats that we moved around to make a theater. That was going to be our theater room, and we were set. And once that was in place, I knew somebody whose sibling was a best-selling author. And they were from the area, and they loved the idea of what we were doing, and they were an angel investor of $1,000. And some friends of ours were angel investors for another $500. And, suddenly this silly, crazy dream I had to do a horror convention in Flint, Michigan was a reality. And I still have trouble imagining that that's a thing. Like again, thinking about it, it's strange to think that we managed that. I'm trying to get my poster out because it's been a while. So we had Wolfman Mac, who was our horror host. We had Tom Sullivan, who our friends knew. Tom knows, and so does this couple who both joined in. So, like, as I started putting this together, I kind of got my merry band together, and there was about 5 of us then. It's like me, my wife, my friend Glenn, this guy named Gary, and his, at the time, wife Jen. And so that was our merry little band of crazy people. And they know Josh Becker. Josh Becker's another Michigan filmmaker who knows, Sam Raimi, Bruce Campbell, and Tom Sullivan, all these people. He agreed to do the show. All of these folks know Hal Delridge, who was an actor in The Evil Dead. He agreed to do the show. And again, there's folks you have to pay and stuff, but the thing that, you find is that relationships make all of this possible. So if you have relationships with people, they'll work with you on price, they'll work with you on how things are done, and a lot of them just want to be treated well and treated with respect. They don't want to have to put money out to get to you and to stay there, and they want to know that they're going to make money. So that's a lot of it. But they just want to be treated well and treated with respect. So we were getting folks that were cool and that were cutting us breaks and stuff. And so the final, I know a paranormal investigator. I'd seen him. It's funny, I'd seen him at a bigger show, but I'd seen him, so I reached out to him. I was like, hey, this is what we're doing. Do you want to do it? And he's like, sounds great. Another guy from the area. And that was the thing, too, is we got people that were kind of regional. Josh Becker wasn't far. Tom Sullivan wasn't far. Wolfman Mac wasn't far. Hal Delridge was relatively close. We got a guy who was a Flint guy who was a very, who's a good friend now, named Lucifer Fulci, who he had reached out to us. He's a musician, and he was from the old LA kind of goth rock scene. He lived it here now, and he was like, oh, hey, this is who I am. I hear you're doing a show. I'd love to do it. We were like, okay. We were looking for guests. A filmmaker from the, I want to say Grand Rapids area named Thomas Berdinsky, who's a friend now. He made a movie. It was funny. It's funny. It's the Italian Zombie movie, I think is the name of it. But it's like a super long, 2 hours plus zombie movie. It's great. It's like a send up of all the old Italian zombie movies. He said he'd come on and be a guest. We got David Hayes, who's an author of comics and books. He said he'd be a guest. April A. Taylor, who was an author and photographer, super talented woman, she said she'd come on. Geraldine Rice, another author, Kevin J. Lindenmuth. So basically, all these people were regional and local, and they were, while not all of them had been guests per se at shows, they all had a resume that that they showed that they had done stuff. Like Hayes had done movies, he's done music videos and stuff. So he's done all these people had done stuff. Lindenmuth has done movies, and they were interesting, and they were fun people, and they were like buying into what we wanted to do. We had a friend of a friend who had a catering, did catering and made like sweet treats and stuff, like cakes and cupcake stuff, and she agreed to come on board and sponsor our green room. So that was what we were known for when we had our convention, was we had an awesome green room. We fed the heck out of our guests, and they always were super duper stoked about how well she treated them. And our last guest we got was Ken Segos, who was in Nightmare on Elm Street 3 and 4. And he's been in a bunch of stuff, but Nightmare on Elm Street 3 and 4. And that's those are the big movies he's known for. He's done other stuff, and he's still active, doing theater productions in California and stuff. But I talked to him, I can't remember how I got his number. Once you start putting this together and put it out there, we were doing the Flint Horror Convention. Agents reach out to you, guests reach out to you, people like they start hearing that you exist. Because a lot of these people, it's another income source, and they want to make money. It's a weekend, you get flown out there, super casual. You're meeting people who pretty much all like you, so it's very easy. We had lots of people reaching out, so I reached out to Ken Segos. Sweet, like seriously, one of the sweetest people I've ever known. He still will reach out once in a while and see how me and my wife are doing. Absolutely, just a sweet, sweet guy. It was funny because he regretted that he hadn't brought his fishing pole because for some reason, he was, thought it was always kind of snowy around here, and he's like, "Oh man, it's so nice out here. I wish I would have brought my fishing pole." But he'd never been out this way, and he had a blast. Everybody had a blast. We showed movies, like we kind of put it out there and like, hey, we're showing movies, and people, and I'm on this train because I've made movies now. Like they want the movies shown, long as you're not going to make money off of them per se. You're not selling their stuff, and they want them, they want eyes on their films. And so we showed a bunch of movies. We had probably 40 something vendors. Synapse Films came out and vended. We had all these great folks, and we had our hiccups, we had our problems, but we just had such a great time. There was a costume contest. We didn't know what we were doing, and it didn't matter because we were sincere, we were good to people, and we were just trying to have fun, and people had a blast, and we were able to do, 2012 we did a show, 2013, 2014, we got bigger and bigger. Our biggest show was like a bunch of money, a bunch more than I like to think about that we spent, until finally, we reached a point where we just weren't, and we always had decent crowds, like a few hundred people, nothing huge, and it was always a disappointment because I just felt like we should have been bigger. And that's partially people want big named guests, and we didn't get big name guests. We got like cult people and amazing people, but just like people want Freddie and Jason and Leatherface, and they want easily recognizable people. You can sit there and say like, oh no, that's Dan Roebuck. Dan Roebuck's done a bunch of Rob Zombie movies. He did Matlock. He's done a ton of stuff. It's like there's Walter Phelan. He was Dr. Satan. You tell them that stuff, and then like, oh, okay. It's like there's Eileen Dietz. She was Pazuzu in Exorcist, but they don't want to hear the explanation. They want oh, that's Freddy. Oh, that's Jason. That kind of thing. So it was always kind of a hard sell. We were always around October, so there's always everybody's going to parties and haunted houses and attractions and stuff. So it was just kind of a hard pull, and we never had that much money to put into advertising. All the money went into the show, so we didn't do as well as I would have liked. But the reason we closed down wasn't because of anything. If you know these kind of things, it's always something nefarious, like somebody screwing somebody, or something sketchy's going on, and that was not us at all. It was a matter of we reached a point where I just couldn't afford to do it anymore, and we couldn't afford to do it anymore. It was better to tap out then than to make promises that we couldn't commit to. Because, again, that's another thing you see is people are like, oh, we're going to have this big show, we're going to do this, and they promise stuff, and they bring people in, and then they can't pay them. Like, one of the things I'm very proud of, as soon as the show was over, I went up to whomever I owed money to. I'm like, blah, blah, how much I owe you? And I'd peel it right off and I'd hand it to them. Just because I don't want them to ever feel like they have to come to me for their money. Because, again, that happens all the time with these shows. Especially shows like us that are smaller, regional. And I wasn't trying to do that. But I figured it was better to get out of the game than have the game get out of us. And so we took a year off. We still did events. We've always done, like we did movie nights, concerts, movies in the park, all these low-dough or free shows, because that was what we were about. Like, that's what we're still about, is doing stuff for people and for families and fun. Like, my mom got me into horror movies, so I love horror movies. I always have. And there's stuff, there's spooky stuff that's not over the top that kids can like. And I'm like, I want to reach those kids too. Like, that's half the fun. If I had a kid, I'd want them to kind of get into horror someday too. So like, that's, you just gotta do it the right way. But so we still did shows, but we just couldn't afford to do that big show. And so 2016 came around. We were like, you know what? What if we did a smaller scale show? So we rented a venue and did a monster marketplace with a few guests, but nobody big, and much more modest. And it was, it was fun. We had a great time. But again, we didn't make money. We lost money. So we're just like, we're gonna evolve. So like, we still exist. So we started this in 2011. We still exist. We're now the Flint Horror Collective, our merry band of friends. We've had friends come and go. Thankfully, no one has left, enraged or angry. Like, not all of us are still friends. Not all of us are close. But like, no one left kind of for crappy reasons. No one cheated anybody. No one blew up at anybody. It just, sometimes it just what you want and what somebody else wants, it doesn't work out. In relationships, in life, that's how it is. But now our big show are film festivals, and we do other shows in between, and it's cool because all of this started with $800 and a bunch of friends working together, and it's like, it shows. I mean, I didn't have any expertise in this. I didn't have anything. I just had passion, and I had a bunch of friends that believed in me, and they were like, okay, let's do it. And once they believed in me and I believed in myself, like, we got people to believe in us, and that's an awesome thing. And to me, it shows like how much you can do with just some passion and some friends and some guts, literal and figurative. Is you've just got to be willing to just kind of put it out there and try it. And that's my little tale. We had interesting times. Like, there was, I always kind of wish that someone would have been filming us during all of this time, doing the film, like the horror conventions and stuff. Gosh, because it's interesting. We had one year where someone that was in a cult classic horror film had contacted us and wanted to do a show with us, and it went from a wee little one-person show to a dramatic several thousand wanted a cast kind of a show and a guarantee of money kind of show. And there were just weird things that happened all through the time, this time. Like, and that was the top of the pops of the weird one. Gosh, we had a guest that snuck off. He came late, snuck off to go hook up with a young girl that he had in the area, and then like hooked up with her again late. I think it was so weird. Like, a couple got caught having sex the first year at the show. Like, just super weird. Just super weird stuff. People are odd, but we had fun. And, like I say, this is our 9th year, and thanks to the pandemic, our schedule's kind of off, but, we're still together, still doing stuff, and that's great. So hopefully, friend, whatever weird passion projects you have, like, you take a little heart in my story and realize that truly anything can be done like that. You just got to believe in it and have the support of the people that you respect and love, and you can do a heck of a lot of stuff on very little money. Well, friend, that's me. I'm getting off at this stop. You take care, stay safe, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.